The great hall of the Galactic Assembly fell silent as Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked to the center platform. Her boots clicked against the crystal floor, each step echoing in the massive chamber. Around her, representatives from 300 species watched from their elevated seats. Some whispered. Others smiled. Elena carried a single data tablet in her hands. Her face showed no emotion as she reached the speaking platform and looked up at the Council of Elders. The 5 ancient beings sat on their high thrones, looking down at her with barely hidden contempt. "The human delegation requests permission to speak," Elena said. Her voice was calm and professional. Elder Zixter, a being that looked like flowing water contained in a crystalline shell, waved a translucent appendage. "Permission granted. Make it quick, human. We have important matters to discuss." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Elena didn't react. She'd heard worse over the past 2 centuries. "I will be brief," she said, activating her tablet. "On behalf of the United Human Government, I hereby submit formal notice of withdrawal from the Galactic Assembly. Effective immediately, humanity ceases all membership obligations and duties." The laughter stopped. The silence that followed was different now. Confused, uncertain. Elder Zixter leaned forward. "Withdrawal? Explain yourself." Elena began to read from her tablet. "For 203 years, humanity has served the Galactic Assembly with loyalty and dedication. We have asked for little and given much. We have served in every capacity requested of us." She paused, then continued. "We have fought your wars. When the Krellian swarm invaded the Outer Rim, you sent human soldiers. 30,000 died. When the Void Plague threatened the core worlds, you sent human medical teams. 8,000 never returned. When pirates raided the trade routes, you called human fleets. We always answered, yes, and you were compensated." Elder Zixter interrupted. "What is your complaint?" "No complaint," Elena said quietly. "Merely a statement of facts. In 200 years, humanity has been assigned to the most dangerous territories. The dead zones, the rift borders, the dark nebula sectors. When other species refused assignments, you sent humans. We accepted without question." Around the chamber, representatives shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Elena continued reading. "Humanity has lost 1.3 million citizens in assembly service. We have fought in 473 conflicts. We have contained 92 separate threats to galactic peace. And yet, when votes are cast in this assembly, humanity's voice counts for 0.03%. The same as species with populations of a few million. The voting system is fair and balanced," another elder spoke up. This one resembled a floating garden of bioluminescent plants. "I did not say it was unfair," Elena replied. "I am simply stating facts. Humanity has reviewed its position and made a decision. We choose to withdraw. All human personnel will return to Sol System within 90 days. All military contracts are void. All defensive positions will be abandoned. All research stations will be evacuated." Now the chamber erupted. Voices shouted from every direction. "You cannot simply leave. What about your obligations? This is desertion." Elder Zixter called for silence. When the noise died down, he spoke directly to Elena. "You speak of duties and sacrifices, human. But humanity has benefited greatly from assembly membership. You have access to our trade networks, our technology, our protection." Elena's expression didn't change. "Your protection," she repeated slowly. "Elder, with respect, when has the Assembly ever protected humanity? When the Korvax attacked our mining colonies in the Ada sector, we requested assistance. The Assembly debated for 6 months. By then, we had already defeated them ourselves. When the dimensional breach opened near New Kyoto, we asked for help sealing it. We were told it was not a priority. Human engineers sealed it alone at the cost of 300 lives. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with various representatives. The Assembly has never protected humanity. Humanity has protected the Assembly. Arrogance. Someone shouted from the upper seats. No, Elena said. Fact. Check your records. Review the data. Humanity has contained, neutralized, or eliminated every major threat to galactic civilization for the past 2 centuries. While you debated in these halls, human soldiers died on distant borders. While you traded and prospered, human families mourned. Elder Zixter's watery form rippled with what might have been anger. If you believe you are so important, then leaving should devastate us. Yet I see only relief on the faces around you. Perhaps humanity's opinion of its own value is inflated. Elena nodded slowly. Perhaps it is. You will have 90 days to test that theory. We have already begun the withdrawal. Human ships are leaving their posts as we speak. Human personnel are packing their equipment. In 3 months, every human will be gone from assembly space. She tapped her tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the platform. It showed a map of the galaxy with countless red dots marking human positions. These are our current deployments, Elena said. Military bases, research stations, defensive installations, monitoring outposts. There are 6,743 separate positions. All will be abandoned. The map zoomed to show the outer rim, the border territories, the dangerous sectors. Red dots covered them like a rash. You will need to make alternative arrangements, Elena said softly. Find other species to guard these borders. Other soldiers to hold these lines. Other fools willing to die in places no one else wants to go. She deactivated the display and looked up at the Council of Elders one last time. Humanity's withdrawal is final. We have served with honor. We have bled for worlds that despised us. We have died protecting species that called us primitives and warmongers. We are done. Elena picked up her tablet and turned to leave. Behind her, the chamber erupted again. This time, the voices were different. Angry. Demanding. You cannot abandon your posts. What about the defense grids? The barrier stations? Elena stopped at the chamber exit and looked back. For the first time, a small smile crossed her face. You have 90 days, she said. I suggest you use them wisely. Good luck, elders. You're going to need it. As the doors closed behind her, the Galactic Assembly descended into chaos. Representatives shouted. Elders demanded order. Accusations flew in every direction. None of them noticed the first warning light that appeared on the long-range sensor displays. A small red indicator, far out on the rim, where a human defensive station had just gone dark. The clock had started ticking. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the UHM's Defiant, watching the stars streak past as her ship moved toward the jump gate. Behind her, the outer rim defense station grew smaller in the viewport. She'd commanded that station for 5 years. Now it was empty. All personnel accounted for, Captain, her first officer reported. We're the last ship out. Sarah nodded but didn't turn away from the window. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of mapped space, the enemy waited. The enemy the Assembly didn't know about. The enemy humanity had been fighting for 150 years. Captain? Her first officer asked. Are you all right? I'm thinking about them, Sarah said quietly. The veiled ones. They're gonna come through now, without us holding the line. Her first officer, a young man named Marcus, stepped beside her. That's not our problem anymore, isn't it? Sarah turned to look at him. There are civilians out here, Marcus. Families, children, species that have no idea what's coming. Species that called us animals, Marcus replied, his voice harder than usual. Species that paid us barely enough to maintain our ships while they grew rich off our protection. They made their choice. Sarah couldn't argue with that. She'd read the same reports everyone else had, seen the same disrespect, watched as human recommendations were ignored, human warnings dismissed, human sacrifices forgotten. But still, execute the jump when ready, she ordered. Take us home. The Defiant shuddered as its jump drive activated. In seconds, they were gone. Behind them, the automated systems on the defense station began their final shutdown sequence. Weapon batteries powered down. Sensor arrays went dark. Shield generators spun down to nothing. In the void beyond the station, something noticed. Something that had tested those shields for decades, probing for weakness, waiting for an opening. Now the shields were gone. The veiled ones began to move. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. On the quantum barrier stations that ringed the dimensional weak points, human researchers packed their equipment. These stations had been humanity's most closely guarded secret. The assembly knew they existed, but not what they did. Not really. Dr. James Okafor watched his team load the last containers onto their transport ship. Around them, the massive machinery of the barrier station hummed with power. The quantum field generators that kept reality stable. The dimensional anchors that prevented things from other universes from slipping through. Should we shut it down? His assistant asked. James shook his head. Leave it running. The automated systems will keep it going for a while. Maybe they'll figure out how to maintain it. And if they don't, then they'll learn what we've been protecting them from. The assistant looked uncomfortable. Sir, shouldn't we warn them? Tell them what these stations do? We did warn them, James said tiredly. 17 times over the past century. We sent reports, data, predictions. The assembly classified it as human paranoia. They said we were inventing threats to justify our military spending. He picked up his personal bag and headed for the transport. Come on, we've done our duty. Time to go home. The transport lifted off, leaving the barrier station behind. Its automated systems would maintain the quantum field for perhaps 6 months. Maybe a year if they were lucky. After that, the barriers would fail, and then something would come through. In the assembly chambers, Junior Ambassador Marcus Reeves stood before the Council of Elders one final time. He was young for an ambassador, only 35, and this was his last official duty before the withdrawal was complete. Elders, I request permission to speak on a matter of urgent importance, he said. Elder Zixter sighed, his watery form rippling with impatience. More human dramatics? We've had enough of your threats and warnings. This is not a threat, Marcus said. This is information you need. The positions humanity is abandoning, they're not just military bases. They serve critical defensive functions. We are aware of what military bases do, human, another elder said with clear condescension. With respect, you're not, Marcus insisted. He activated a holographic display. These installations on the outer rim, they're not defending against pirates or raiders. For the past 150 years, humanity has been containing an extra-dimensional species we call the Veiled Ones. They exist partially outside normal space. They feed on biological matter. Without our constant pressure, they will spread. The chamber filled with laughter. Not nervous laughter this time. Genuine amusement. Extra-dimensional species, one representative mocked. Next, you'll tell us about ghosts and spirits. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. This is exactly why we're leaving. You don't listen. You don't learn. We've sent you data, sensor readings, biological samples. You've ignored everything, because your evidence is always conveniently classified, Elder Zixter said, or mysteriously lost, or requires technology only humans possess. We are not fools, Ambassador Reeves. No, Marcus said quietly. You're not fools. You're just too proud to accept that humans might know something you don't. He deactivated his display. I said what I came to say. In approximately 3 weeks, the first Outer Rim colonies will go silent. You'll send investigation teams. They'll find nothing but corpses and collapsed structures. You'll think it's a natural disaster or a disease. Marcus walked toward the exit. It's not. It's the veiled ones, and once they get established, they're very hard to remove. Humanity learned that the hard way back when we first encountered them. Thank you for your concern, Elder Zixter said with clear sarcasm. We will manage just fine without human fear-mongering. Marcus paused at the door. I hope you're right, Elder. I truly do. Because if you're wrong, a lot of innocent people are going to die. People who trusted you to protect them. He left the chamber to the sound of dismissive laughter. By the end of the week, the last human ship passed through the Soul Jump Gate. The massive gate, built by human engineers 2 centuries ago, shut down behind them. Earth's defense fleet repositioned, forming a protective sphere around humanity's home system. Admiral Richard Vasquez, Elena's brother, stood on the bridge of the flagship UHM's Indomitable. Before him, holographic displays showed the deployment of humanity's forces. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon, all of them pulled back to protect a single system. It feels wrong, his tactical officer said softly. Abandoning them? We didn't abandon them, Richard replied. They abandoned us. They just didn't realize it until now. Sir, we're receiving automated distress signals from Outer Rim Sector 7, the communications officer reported. Multiple colonies reporting. She paused, listening to her headset. Reporting attacks by unknown forces. They're requesting immediate assistance. Log it, Richard ordered. Take no action. Sir? You heard me. Log the distress call. We are no longer part of the assembly. Their emergencies are not our concern. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what those distress calls meant. People were dying. People they could save, that they had their orders. Humanity was done bleeding for an ungrateful galaxy. Richard turned away from the displays and looked out at the stars. Set condition 2 throughout the fleet. All personnel are to get rest while they can. Something tells me we're not going to have peace for long, because he knew what the others suspected. Sooner or later, the assembly would come begging. And when they did, humanity would have a decision to make. But for now, they watched and waited as the galaxy learned a hard lesson about taking its guardians for granted. The first colony went silent on day 7. It was a small mining settlement on the edge of the Outer Rim. Population barely 5,000. Mostly Valorian workers and their families. The automated distress beacon activated at 0347 Galactic Standard Time, then cut off 30 seconds later. The Assembly's response team arrived 4 days later. What they found would haunt them forever. Commander Thylek of the Valorian fleet stepped off his ship onto the colony's landing pad. Everything looked normal at first. The building stood intact. The equipment was undamaged. But there was no sound, no movement, no life. Spread out, he ordered his team. Search for survivors. They found the first bodies in the residential sector. Thylek had seen death before, but nothing like this. The colonists were dried out, their bodies looking like ancient mummies. Their faces were frozen in expressions of terror. Sir, one of his soldiers called out. You need to see this. In the colony's central square, they found hundreds more. Men, women, children, all desiccated, all terrified. And on the walls, scratched in desperation, were messages. They came through the walls. Can't see them clearly. Please, someone help us. Thylek's hands shook as he recorded the scene. Get samples. Document everything. and contact the assembly immediately. The message he sent back was marked urgent priority. The assembly's response was to classify it and send investigation teams to 6 other colonies that had recently gone silent. They found the same thing at every location. By week 2, the Outer Rim was in panic. 12 colonies destroyed, 20,000 dead, and the attacks were spreading inward toward more populated sectors. The assembly convened an emergency session. Elder Zixter addressed the gathered representatives, his watery form churning with agitation. "We face an unknown enemy," he said. "An enemy that strikes without warning and leaves no survivors. Our military forces are being mobilized to investigate and contain this threat." "It's them," a voice called out from the gallery. "The Veiled Ones. The humans warned us about them." Zixter's form stiffened. "The humans are gone. This is clearly some new threat, possibly a biological weapon or unknown species. We will handle it ourselves." But handling it proved impossible. The assembly fleet sent to the Outer Rim engaged the enemy 3 days later. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 11 minutes. Out of 47 ships, only 3 escaped. The survivors described fighting enemies they could barely see, things that phased in and out of normal space, that ignored shields and tore through hulls like paper. Commander Thylek was one of the survivors. His report was brief and terrifying. "They're not from our dimension. Energy weapons pass through them unless we adjust frequency constantly. They move through solid matter. They consume biological tissue on contact. We lost before we even understood what we were fighting." On day 19, the first quantum barrier station failed. The station had been automated for weeks now, running on the programs human engineers had set up before leaving. But those programs required maintenance, adjustments, monitoring. Without human technicians, the quantum field began to destabilize. When it finally collapsed, reality tore open. The research colony nearest to the barrier station was called Haven. 7,000 scientists and their families lived there, studying the local nebula formations. They had no warning when their sky split open and things started coming through, things that shouldn't exist. Creatures made of angles that hurt to look at, beings that existed in more dimensions than the 3-dimensional universe could properly contain. Entities that fed on thought and sanity. The colony's distress call was gibberish, screaming, static, and then nothing. When an assembly team finally arrived, they found the entire colony transformed. Buildings twisted into impossible shapes. The ground rippled like water. And the colonists were gone, though sometimes their screams could still be heard, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Seal this system," the team leader ordered. "No one goes in or out. Mark it as a dead zone." But it was too late. Whatever had come through the barrier was spreading, and there were 46 other barrier stations scattered across the galaxy, all of them slowly failing. By week 4, the truth could no longer be hidden. In the assembly chambers, representatives from across the galaxy gathered in emergency session. The gallery was packed with observers, all of them desperate for answers. Elder Zixter looked older now, his crystalline shell cracked in places, his watery form less stable. He addressed the assembly with a voice that trembled. "We have reviewed the classified human files," he said, "the records they left behind when they departed. And we have made a terrible discovery." He activated a holographic display. It showed a map of the galaxy, marked with red zones. There were dozens of them, scattered across every sector. Each of these zones represents an active threat that humanity was containing or monitoring. The Veiled Ones in the Outer Rim, the dimensional breaches at the barrier stations, the consuming dark in the deep core, the recursive paradox in the temporal sectors. The display zoomed in on each zone, showing data, reports, casualty figures. Centuries of human effort documented in meticulous detail. 47 separate existential threats, Zixter continued. 47 different ways the galaxy could end. And humanity was fighting them all alone, while we mocked them for being warmongers. The chamber sat in stunned silence. A young Valorian representative stood up. She was an archivist, not a politician, but she'd spent the past week reviewing the human files. "I found something else," she said, her voice shaking. "Battle reports from the Korvax War 15 years ago. The human Third Fleet was holding the line at the Threshold Nebula when they received a distress call from a civilian convoy. Terralian ships. The Terralians had been calling humans primitive apes for decades." She pulled up a video file. It showed human soldiers on a damaged ship, fires burning behind them, alarms blaring. The fleet commander ordered his ships to break formation and protect the convoy. They saved 800 Terralian lives. 37 humans died in the process. And do you know what the Terralian government did afterward? The chamber waited. They filed a complaint. Said the human response was too slow. Asked for a refund on their assembly protection fees because humans had let 2 of their cargo ships get damaged. She closed the file. And the humans never said anything. They just went back to their posts and kept protecting us. Kept dying for us. While we spat on them. Elder Zixter bowed his head, or what passed for a head in his species. The human files contained thousands of such reports. Sacrifices made. Insults endured. Warnings ignored. For 200 years, they were our shield, and we treated them like our servants. What do we do? Someone asked. We beg, another elder said. We go to Sol and we beg them to come back. They won't come, a representative argued. We humiliated them. Disrespected them. Why would they help us now? In the back of the chamber, a screen activated. It showed the latest casualty reports. Colony after colony going dark. Ships destroyed. Entire sectors being evacuated. The numbers climbed steadily, relentlessly. 40,000 dead, 60,000, 100,000 and rising. We send a delegation to Sol, Zixter decided. The full Council of Elders. We will go ourselves and ask for humanity's help. And if they refuse? Someone asked. Zixter looked at the casualty reports, watching the numbers climb. Then we die. Because without humanity, we cannot survive. The galaxy is learning that lesson right now, one corpse at a time. The vote was unanimous. The Council of Elders would leave immediately for Sol. They expected to arrive and plead their case. They expected humanity to be angry, perhaps to demand concessions, but ultimately to help because that's what humanity always did. What they didn't expect was the message that greeted them when they entered the Sol system. It was automated, cold, professional. Your delegation has been received. Please maintain position at the outer marker. Your request for audience will be heard in 90 days. Until then, please wait. 90 days. The exact amount of time the Assembly had given humanity to withdraw. The Council of Elders sat in their ships at the edge of the Sol system and watched the days count down, while behind them, the galaxy burned. Elder Zixter watched Earth from the viewport of his diplomatic ship. 3 months had passed since the Council arrived at Sol. 3 months of waiting while the galaxy died behind them. Every day, new reports arrived. Every day, the numbers grew worse. 200,000 dead. Then 500,000. Then 1,000,000. 40% of assembly space was now classified as lost or compromised. Entire species had been evacuated from their homeworlds. The outer rim was completely gone, consumed by the veiled ones. The dimensional breaches were spreading, creating zones where reality itself broke down. And here they sat, waiting. This is revenge, one of the other elders said bitterly. They're punishing us. making us suffer while they watched safely from their fortress system. Zixter didn't respond. He'd stopped trying to predict human behavior. Every assumption he'd ever made about them had been wrong. On day 89, a human ship finally approached. It was small, unarmed, a simple transport. A young human woman came aboard the Elder's ship. She introduced herself as Lieutenant Sarah Mendez, Protocol Officer. "The United Human Council will see you tomorrow," she said simply. "Please prepare your delegation." "Lieutenant," Zixter asked, "may I ask a question?" She nodded. Double quotes. "Why did you make us wait exactly 90 days? Sarah's expression didn't change. "Because that's what you gave us. When we submitted our withdrawal notice, you gave us 90 days to leave everything we built, everyone we protected, every position we'd held. We thought it appropriate to offer you the same courtesy." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Elder, when you present your case tomorrow, please be honest. The Council has access to all your files now. Every classified report, every internal memo, every dismissive comment about humanity in your private meetings. We know what you really think of us." She left the elders sitting in uncomfortable silence. The next day, the Council was brought to Earth's surface for the first time. They traveled to Geneva, to a building that had once been humanity's United Nations headquarters centuries ago. Now it housed the United Human Council. The human representatives sat at a long table. 5 men and 5 women, representing Earth's major governmental blocks. Admiral Richard Vasquez sat at one end. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat at the other. Elder Zixter and his fellow council members sat across from them. There was no ceremony, no diplomatic pleasantries. Elena simply activated a holographic display and began speaking. "You've come to ask for our help. Before we discuss that, we'd like to show you something." The display showed footage from the human withdrawal. Soldiers packing up their equipment. Engineers dismantling defensive systems. Medical staff evacuating hospitals. "This is the Frontier Station Beta," Elena narrated. It protected 3 Valorian colonies and 1 Terralian settlement. The human garrison there consisted of 3,000 personnel. They'd been stationed there for 40 years. The footage showed human soldiers saying goodbye to local children, families they'd clearly grown close to. When the withdrawal order came, these soldiers had a choice: follow orders and leave, or stay and protect people who'd never once thanked them for their service. The footage showed the garrison commander, an older woman with gray hair, addressing her troops. "They chose to follow orders," Elena said, "because that's what soldiers do. But it wasn't an easy choice. Look at their faces." The display showed soldiers crying as they boarded their ships, looking back at the colonies they were abandoning. Now watch what happened 3 weeks later. The footage switched to show the Valorian colonies under attack. The veiled ones pouring through the defenses. Civilians dying. And in their final transmissions, the colonists begging for help. "Where are the humans?" One transmission pleaded, "Why aren't they helping us?" Elena paused the footage. These colonists had spent decades calling our soldiers warmongers and brutes. But when death came, they called for us anyway. Because deep down, they knew who would save them. She looked directly at the elders. No one came. Those colonies are gone. All of them. The display changed, showing a different scene. A human research station. This is Dr. James Okafor. He's a quantum physicist. He spent 20 years maintaining Barrier Station 7. In that time, he submitted 42 reports to the Assembly warning about the dimensional instabilities. He requested backup systems, additional funding, more personnel. The footage showed Dr. Okafor's reports. Each one marked, filed, no action needed, or human paranoia. Ignore. The Assembly never responded. And when we withdrew, Dr. Okafor had to make a choice. Stay at his post, keeping billions safe, or follow orders and come home. The display showed Dr. Okafor on his last day at the station, his hand on the control panel. He told me later that he almost stayed, Elena said softly. Almost threw away his career, his life, everything, to keep that barrier stable. To protect people who'd ignored every warning he'd ever sent them. Why didn't he? Zixter asked, his voice barely audible. Because his daughter needed him, Elena replied. She's 7 years old. She'd already lost her mother to a barrier breach 5 years ago. A breach that happened because the assembly cut our funding and we couldn't maintain proper safety protocols. Dr. Okafor wasn't going to make her an orphan. The display now showed casualty reports from the barrier station's failure. The Haven colony. 7,000 dead. His choice. Their deaths. That's on you, not him. The room fell silent. One of the Human Council members, an older man named Chun, spoke next. We've been reviewing your files as well. We found something interesting. Reports from your internal security services about the human problem. He pulled up a document. This memo from 50 years ago discusses humanity's growing military power. It recommends keeping humans in dangerous positions to limit their population growth. It suggests assigning them to conflicts with high casualty rates. It explicitly states that a smaller human population is easier to control. Zixter felt his crystalline shell crack further. That memo. It was from a fringe group, not official policy. No? Chum pulled up another document. Then, what about this resource allocation report? It shows that human colonies received 30% less funding than other species, despite having 40% higher population densities. When human governors requested additional resources, they were denied. But when the Valorian Prime Worlds requested luxury renovations to their diplomatic quarters, they received twice the funding they asked for. More documents appeared. Years of systematic discrimination. Subtle, bureaucratic, but unmistakable. You kept us in line by keeping us poor and desperate, Chun said. By making sure we needed the assembly more than the assembly needed us. Or so you thought. Admiral Vasquez spoke for the first time. The question is, why? What did humanity do to deserve 2 centuries of contempt? None of the elders answered immediately. Finally, a younger elder, one made of living metal, spoke up. You scared us, she admitted. Humanity appeared seemingly from nowhere, reached for the stars in less than a century, and showed an adaptability that took other species millennia to develop. You learned our languages in months. You mastered our technologies in years. You fought with a ferocity that shocked us. She paused. We were afraid that if we gave you equal standing, you would surpass us, dominate us. So we pushed you down, kept you in your place, used your strengths while denying you respect. And now? Elena asked. Now we're dying, Zixter said bluntly. The threats you contained are consuming us. Our fleets cannot stop them. Our scientists cannot understand them. We've lost 40% of our territory in 3 months. At this rate, the assembly will cease to exist within a year. He stood, his crystalline form trembling. We came here to beg, to plead for your help, to offer you anything you want. Full voting rights, equal resource distribution, reparations for 2 centuries of injustice. Whatever you demand. And you think that's enough? Admiral Vasquez asked coldly. You think saying sorry and offering us what we should have had from the beginning will make up for 1 million dead humans? No, Zixter said. Nothing can make up for what we've done. But we're asking anyway. Not for ourselves. For the innocent. For the children. For the species who had no say in how humanity was treated. Elena stood and walked to the window. Outside, She could see Earth's skyline, humanity's homeworld, the one planet in the galaxy where they were truly safe. "We've been debating this for 3 months," she said. "The council is divided. Some say we should let the assembly fall, let you reap what you've sown. Others say we should help, but only on our terms. Make you grovel, make you pay." She turned back to face the elders. "But there's a third option, the one I'm advocating for." "Which is?" Zixter asked. "We help because it's the right thing to do," Elena said simply. "We help because there are innocent lives at stake. We help because that's who humanity is, even when helping means protecting people who despise us." She walked back to the table. "But we're not going back to the way things were. If humanity returns, we return as equals. Full voting rights, equal representation, equal resources, and complete autonomy over our military operations. You don't get to order us around anymore. We'll work with you, not for you." Zixter's entire form sagged with relief. "Agreed. Anything, everything you ask. There's one more condition," Admiral Vasquez said. "Everything gets declassified. Every report we filed, every threat we faced, every sacrifice we made. The galaxy needs to know the truth. All of it. But that will humiliate the assembly," another elder protested. "Yes," Elena said. "It will. And you're going to accept that humiliation. Because the people of the galaxy deserve to know who was really protecting them all these years. They deserve to know that their leaders failed them." The elders looked at each other. Finally, Zixter nodded. "We agree to your terms." Elena picked up a datapad. "Then let's get started. We have a galaxy to save." The first human fleet emerged from the Soul Jump Gate exactly 6 hours after the agreement was signed. Not because they'd been preparing for only 6 hours, but because they'd been ready for 3 months. Waiting for the word to deploy, Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UHM's Defiant once again, watching the tactical display as her ship led a battle. Grouped toward the outer rim, toward the Veiled Ones, toward the fight she'd left behind 3 months ago. "It feels strange," her first officer Marcus said. "Going back." "Everything's different now," Sarah replied. "We're not going back as servants. We're going as partners." "Think they'll actually treat us that way?" Sarah smiled slightly. "They will if they want to survive." Behind the Defiant, 300 human warships followed in formation. And behind them, spread across the galaxy, thousands more were deploying to their old positions. But this time with proper support, proper funding, proper respect. The human return had been announced to the entire galaxy 2 days earlier. Not through official assembly channels, but through every public network simultaneously. The humans had broadcast everything. Every classified file. Every hidden report. Every secret they'd been keeping. The galaxy had spent 48 hours reading the truth. On the Valorian homeworld, young Kira Thises sat in her apartment, scrolling through the declassified files. She was an archivist, the same one who'd found the video of human soldiers saving the Terralian convoy. Now she was compiling everything into a public database. The files were extensive, detailed, horrifying, battle reports from conflicts the Assembly had never acknowledged. Medical records of human soldiers dying from wounds sustained protecting colonies that had never thanked them. Communications logs showing human commanders begging for backup that never came. But what hit Kira hardest were the personal logs. Diary entries from soldiers. Letters home from researchers. Messages that were never meant to be public. She read one from a human marine named Thomas Rodriguez, stationed at Frontier Beta, the same station Elena had shown the elders. Day 2847 at Frontier Beta. The Valorian kids brought us flowers again today. They don't understand why we're here, why we carry guns and patrol the perimeter. Their parents barely acknowledge us. But the kids don't care about politics. They just see us as the big friendly soldiers who give them candy and tell them stories. Little Kira asked me today why I always look tired. I told her it's because I stay up late making sure monsters don't come. She laughed and said monsters aren't real. I didn't have the heart to tell her I've killed 17 of them this month alone, just on the other side of that fence. Sleep well, kid. That's why I'm here. Kira read the name again. Little Kira. She was little Kira. She remembered the human soldiers from her childhood. Remembered one with kind eyes who'd given her sweets and told her silly stories she'd never known. He was fighting monsters to keep her safe. The database she was building grew day by day. Other archivists from other species contributed. Journalists investigated. Historians verified. And slowly, the full picture emerged. Humanity hadn't just been defending the outer rim. They'd been everywhere, fighting everything, dying quietly while the rest of the galaxy lived in blissful ignorance. The public reaction was swift and overwhelming. Protest erupted across assembly worlds. Not against humanity, but against their own governments. Demonstrations demanding the resignation of officials who'd enabled the discrimination. Memorial services for the human dead that had been forgotten. On Earth, Elena Vasquez watched the news broadcasts with mixed feelings. Vindication felt hollow when millions were already dead. Her brother Richard sat beside her in her office. The first battle reports are coming in. Sarah Chun's group engaged the Veiled Ones at Frontier Beta. They've re-established the containment field. Casualties? Elena asked. 12 wounded. No deaths. The Veiled Ones weren't prepared for us to come back. They'd spread out, assuming they had free range. Richard pulled up a tactical map. The containment is working. We're pushing them back sector by sector. Within 2 months, we should have them back to pre-withdrawal boundaries. Within 6 months, we might actually eliminate them entirely. Now that we have proper resources and support. Elena nodded. What about the barrier stations? Harder. Dr. Okafor and his team are visiting each station, but some of the dimensional breaches have stabilized. They can't be simply closed anymore. We're going to need permanent installations to keep them contained. The Assembly has agreed to provide whatever we need. They don't have a choice, Richard said bluntly. Then his expression softened. But I've been reading the reports from the front lines. It's not just about resources. The Assembly species are different now, respectful, grateful. Some of them are even volunteering to serve alongside our troops. Elena raised an eyebrow. Really? There's a Valorian unit that requested assignment to Sarah Chun's group. Said they wanted to learn from the real defenders, and a group of Terralian engineers volunteered to help maintain the barrier stations. Richard pulled up a video message. This one came in this morning. The video showed a Valorian elder, one of the civilian leaders from Frontier Beta, the same colony Sarah had been forced to abandon. Captain Chun, the elder said, his voice shaking. My name is Thorn Vess. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you. I was one of the colonists who complained about human military presence in our territory. I called you warmongers. I said we didn't need armed guards in our peaceful colonies. He paused, wiping his eyes. I was wrong. So very wrong. When the Veiled Ones came, when my people were dying, I finally understood. You weren't here to threaten us. You were here to protect us. And I was too blind and proud to see it. The elder held up a photo. This is my granddaughter. She's 7. She survived because we evacuated before the Veiled Ones reached our sector. But the colony next to ours wasn't so lucky. They didn't evacuate in time. Everyone died, including children the same age as my granddaughter. His voice broke. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for saving us even though we never deserved it. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The video ended. Elena sat in silence for a moment. There are thousands of messages like that, Richard said quietly. From across the galaxy. Apologies. Thank you notes. Memorials being built to honor fallen human soldiers. Too little too late for the million who already died, Elena said. Maybe, but it's something. Across the galaxy, human forces continued their deployment. The battles were hard. The enemies were deadly. But this time, humanity wasn't fighting alone. At Barrier Station 7, Dr. James Okafor worked alongside a team of Terralian engineers. They'd spent 2 weeks stabilizing the quantum field, preventing the dimensional breach from expanding further. Dr. Okafor, one of the Terralians, said, "I need to tell you something. I was on the Assembly Review Board that rejected your funding requests. All 42 of them." James didn't look up from his work. "I know. I dismissed your reports as human paranoia. I called you an alarmist. I'm the reason you didn't have the resources to prevent this breach." Now James did look up. The Terralian engineer had tears running down his scaled face. "When the Haven colony fell, when 7,000 people died because this barrier failed, I read your reports again. Every one of them. You warned us. You told us exactly what would happen. And I ignored you because I thought I knew better." The engineer's voice dropped to a whisper. "My sister lived on Haven. She was a teacher there. She died in the breach. And it's my fault because I didn't listen to you." James was quiet for a long moment. Then he put down his tools and faced the engineer directly. "What's your name?" "Calcith." "Calcith, I'm not going to tell you it's okay. It's not. Your sister and 6,999 other people died because the Assembly didn't listen. That's a fact, and it's going to hurt for the rest of your life." Calcith nodded, not arguing. "But here's what I'm going to tell you," James continued. "You are here now. You're helping make sure it doesn't happen again. That's not redemption. Nothing can redeem those deaths. But it's a start. So let's get back to work and make sure no one else's sister dies because of a barrier failure." Calcith wiped his eyes and returned to his station. They worked in silence for a while. Then Calcith spoke again. "Why did you come back? Humanity could have stayed in Sol. Let us all die. It would have been justice." James adjusted a quantum stabilizer before answering. "Because justice isn't the same thing as revenge. And because somewhere out there, there's a 7-year-old girl who deserves to grow up safe. Just like my daughter. Just like your sister deserved. We came back for them. By the end of 6 months, the situation had stabilized. The veiled ones were contained. Most barrier stations were operational again. The galaxy was recovering. But it was a different galaxy now. In the assembly chambers, now restructured to give humanity equal representation, Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in a seat at the main council table. Not below it. Not in the gallery. At the table itself. Beside her sat representatives from a dozen other species, including Elder Zixter, who'd stepped down from his position as head of the council but remained as an advisor. "The quarterly defense report," Elena said, activating a display. "Human forces have eliminated the Veiled One presence in Sectors 7 through 12. Barrier stations are at 97% operational capacity. The deep core contamination is being studied by a joint human-Valorian research team." She paused. "We're also proposing a new initiative. A joint military academy where all assembly species can learn proper defensive tactics and threat response. No more secrets. No more classified files. If there's a danger to the galaxy, everyone should know about it, and everyone should know how to fight it." The proposal passed unanimously. After the meeting, Zixter approached Elena. His crystalline shell had been repaired, but the cracks were still visible. I keep them as a reminder, he said, noticing her looking at the cracks. Of the cost of pride and fear. Good, Elena said simply. You could have let us die, Zixter said. Many species would have. Many species aren't human. What makes humanity so different? So willing to forgive? Elena considered the question. We don't forgive easily. And we never forget. But we understand something that maybe other species don't. Survival isn't about punishing those who wronged you. It's about making sure the future is better than the past. She looked out at the assembly chamber, now filled with representatives working together in ways they never had before. 200 years ago, humanity joined the assembly hoping for partnership. We got servitude instead. But we kept hoping, kept working, kept protecting, because we knew that eventually things could change. And they did. It just took a catastrophe to make it happen. Do you think the change will last? Zixter asked. That's up to all of us, Elena said. But I'll tell you this. There's a human marine stationed at Frontier Beta right now. And every day, Valorian children bring her flowers and thank her for keeping them safe. That marine's name is Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez. Her grandfather was Thomas Rodriguez, who served at the same station 20 years ago. The children back then barely knew he existed. She smiled slightly. That's progress. Slow, painful, bought with blood and sacrifice. But it's real, and it's worth protecting. Far from the assembly chambers, on a defensive station at the edge of map space, a young human soldier stood watch. Around her, sensors monitored the darkness beyond, watching for threats. A Valorian child approached, no more than 8 years old, carrying a small bundle of flowers. For you, the child said shyly. Thank you for keeping us safe. The soldier knelt down and accepted the flowers with a smile. You're welcome. What's your name? Akira. My grandmother told me that humans are heroes. She said a human soldier saved her life when she was little. The soldier felt a lump in her throat. She thought of all the soldiers who'd stood watch before her. All the ones who'd died unacknowledged. All the sacrifices that had been forgotten. Your grandmother is right, she said softly. But we're not heroes because we're human. We're heroes because we choose to be. And that's a choice anyone can make. The child smiled and ran off to play. The soldier returned to her post, holding the flowers carefully. Behind her, the galaxy continued on, imperfect, complicated, sometimes cruel, but safe, because someone stood watch, because someone always would.